be celebrating big on Saturday. We're going to have a lot of, and if there's any protester who wants to come out, they will be met with very big force. By the way, for those people that want to protest, they're going to be met with very big force. And I haven't even heard about a protest. But, you know, this is people that hate our country. But they will be met with very heavy force.
I'm quite certain that what President Trump meant to say was that if any violent protesters arrive at the 250th anniversary, the 250th birthday of the U.S. Army, that they'll be met with force. Not if they're peaceful protesters. I would have benefited from adding one or two words there, I think. Call me old-fashioned. But I try to speak in complete sentences and complete thoughts as well. A very good Thursday to you, and welcome back once again. We continue to be reached at 888-630-9625. We've got a big parade happening here in Washington on Saturday. Democrats are promising to disrupt. They think it's Tiananmen Square. The funny irony is they are the communists. No sense of irony. They use the words, but they don't know what they mean. Democrats are not really good at anything. Oh, they can firebomb Jews and things like that. They're pretty good at that. But another thing they're not good at is baseball. Not so good at baseball. Last night was the congressional baseball game, and we did not attend the baseball game. We watched it on television, though, on the Fox Sports Net. And we had a great time watching. We were at home and we were having dinner, and I was out with a friend last night before the baseball game started, sitting in a nice patio outside here in Washington, D.C., enjoying a few beverages. I'll admit I had a margarita, and then I had a couple of beers. I had 2 beers and just had some chips and things like that. And it was good. It was real nice. And then went home, and my best girl and I, we whipped up dinner at home. We had some fun dinner at home. And we watched the baseball game on the television. And let me tell you something. The Democrats, they took a drubbing, even the left-wing Democrats at The Hill, an alleged newspaper in Washington, D.C., with the headline, Republicans drub Democrats 13-2 in 5th straight congressional baseball game win. Now, my best girl and I watched it, the Democrats, they had a pitcher who wasn't very good at throwing a baseball. In fact, he hit so many Republicans in the head. He hit the pitcher, the Democrat pitcher, hit so many Republicans in the head with pitches that by the 4th inning, we were calling him Lee Harvey. Hey, Lee Harvey, what's with how many politicians are you going to hit in the head? What's the matter with you people? So the Republicans drubbed Democrats 13-2 in 5th straight congressional baseball game win. And we had talked about going down to the baseball game. They had there was a big crowd. And in fact, the broadcasters last night said the crowd was 33,000 or something for the congressional baseball game. And they had it's funny, my best girl and I were making fun of the people in the crowd. You can pick out the surly-looking, overweight, tattooed women. And there's some Democrat congressional staffers there. They have all their matching tattoos. And crazy stuff, but Republicans once again defeated. We decided not to go to the game. It was a time crunch, and it wasn't going to be easy. And, easy is sometimes better than not easy. Republicans once again defeated the Democrats at the congressional baseball game on Wednesday, 13-2, marking the GOP's 5th straight win in the annual bipartisan contest to raise money for charity. The Democrat Party, they want to raise money for Planned Parenthood and the Chinese Communist Party. But the margin of the game was not nearly as wide as last year's walloping when Republicans brought in this says a 31-11 victory, a 31-11 victory. But the Democrats could not capitalize on several offensive opportunities. Yeah, their opportunities were certainly offensive. And what's with their pitcher, Lee Harvey? That was really something. Keep hitting the Republicans in the head, getting another walk, runs are walking in, crossing home plate, leaving 9 runners, the Democrats, on base, struggling defensively in the game's later innings. It was only a 7-inning game because, it's for children. It's for the kids. It's for the kids. And they're like that. Yeah. The Democrats, as is true most years, sported individual jerseys, not wearing a team thing because they're all running in opposite directions and they're insane, wearing individual jerseys of their choice, whereas the Republicans opted for their standard red uniform, Make America Great Again baseball caps. Some went further in on the MAGA memorabilia with starting pitcher Greg Stubbe. Greg Stubbe from Florida is the guy who hit a legitimate home run in the congressional baseball game at a professional baseball field, Nationals Park in Washington. And Greg Stubbe hit a legit home run several years ago now. Sporting gold sneakers signed by President Trump before the game. Got his gold sneakers and signed by President Trump. Representative Jared Moskowitz, the Democrat from Florida, was not optimistic about his team's chances before the game. When asked whether he thought the Democrats would win, he plainly said no. No, it was the truest thing he ever said. Isn't that amazing? Now, one of the things that was really noteworthy, I thought, and something that I hope sticks around, is that the Republicans on their jerseys had a date. And what do you think the date was? What was the date on their jerseys? It was kind of an interesting thing. My best girl and I, we were looking at the jerseys, the uniforms, and said, "Oh, is that?" And actually, it was my best girl that first said it. Said, "Is that what I think it is?" Because that's kind of an interesting thing. The date that Steve Scalise was shot and nearly killed by a Democrat Party suicide attacker on a baseball field in Alexandria, Virginia, several years ago now. And I've got to say, it was, I think, smart and good and practical of the Republicans, and they should leave that date on their jerseys because it matters, just by the way. And we were watching this and said, "Oh, wow, look at that. They've got a thing on their sleeves, and isn't that wonderful?" Have they finished investigating that? Because that's kind of an interesting event in American political history. And their boy James Hodgkinson, who was a volunteer for the Bernie Sanders campaign, and so they had 6/14/17, 6/14/2017 on the arms of their jerseys to remind the Democrats that they're psychotic, would-be mass political assassins like James Hodgkinson, who showed up and had a Chinese combat rifle and wanted to murder the entire baseball field of Republican members of Congress who were practicing for the baseball game several years ago now, and shot Steve Scalise and then shot 4 people that day, including a police officer. Police had to gun down James Hodgkinson, the Bernie Sanders Democrat campaign volunteer. And the Republicans had that date on their sleeves, which I thought was darn good, I've got to say. Anyway, the Republicans won 13-2 last night, 5th straight win in the annual congressional baseball game. The Steve Scalise did show up and had an at-bat, but he's still recovering from being shot through the midsection by a Democrat, would-be mass-murdering political assassin, because Democrats, the Democrat Party, is a violent party. Shot Steve Scalise 2017. They shot President Trump a couple years ago in Butler, Pennsylvania. And the Democrat Party is rioting now and burning cities. They're burning Seattle now. They're burning Los Angeles. And it's because illegal aliens need love, too. And who better to give them their love than the Democrat Party? Because they are the left. And then the Democrats don't send the police in when a federal building's being attacked. When federal law enforcement are being attacked by a large mob, the Democrats don't send the police in. Let me say the Democrats didn't send the police in. And so the President of the United States, in order to protect federal law enforcement officials who, have been assaulted by Democrat members of Congress, the lunatic Democrat member of Congress, who yesterday I shared with you has been charged with multiple crimes for assaulting federal officers because they're defending illegal aliens, like Kilmore Abrego Garcia, the gang member, wife beater, human trafficker, and the Democrats want to date him. They want to take him home and cuddle up with Kilmore Abrego Garcia. And they want their daughters to date Luigi Mangione. They do. The Democrat Party. Not well at all. Demented people. So great baseball game. My best girl, we watched it on the television and had a great time. Now, the truth is, out our window, we can see the lights from the baseball stadium. And we did see the lights from the baseball stadium. And also, did you see the moon last night? Crazy super moon last night. Big full moon. And rising is the strawberry moon, annual event in June. But boy, it was bright orange and very full. Great moonrise last night in Washington, D.C. And it was kind of rising over, not quite the baseball stadium, but the Capitol. And city looked great last night from on high. Good stuff. All right, so we got that going. And Democrats lose again. But their pitcher, Lee Harvey, he kept hitting Republicans in the head. And the Democrats are okay with that. They're not on our side. All right, I've got a lot of stories to get to. Got Democrat representative goes on unhinged rant about her own lady parts. That's one of the headlines I have for you today. Representative Sanchez, another Democrat lady, accuses Treasury Secretary Bessent of gender-based interruption. Gender-based interruption. She should see what Joe Biden does, because that's another thing. But the Democrats violently crazy and using all kinds of words that you wouldn't use in polite company at the dinner table. And Democrat members of Congress are the third world. They're the left. They're not civilized people. David Hogg of the DNC, I've got an update on him because he's been basically kicked out of the DNC, one of their child apocalyptic prophets of doom, and he is out because he's got some really idiotic ideas. His statement, his bye-bye statement, made me laugh out loud yesterday. I want to get to that and share it with you, too. Right now, Michael, why don't we go to the telephones? Let's go to Mary, calling from Fairfax, Virginia. Mary, quite contrary. You're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hey, Chris. Thank you for taking my call. I just wanted to say, as David touched on earlier, if history with our current media and the American left wrapping themselves in the Constitution and huddling within the massive traditional Democrats has taught us anything, it's that when a reporter asks a stupid question that begs the obvious answer, it usually means that the left is going to pounce on the ambiguity in language. I was watching Newsmax last night, and Kamala Harris is already out there claiming that these riots in L.A. are overwhelmingly peaceful. And, it was during the segment with Willie Brown, and Willie Brown actually showed up to call Kamala and Newsom out and say, look, you guys, Kamala Harris's loss is completely her fault because she's not addressing the needs of the people. And if Newsom ever thought about becoming president, if he continues down the line that he's going, as a lot of these far leftists pretending to be traditional Democrats have been going, they're going to continue to lose. And, when it comes to this language, bottom line is if the conservatives and if Trump and his administration have learned anything, you have to be clear as if you're speaking to a child. You say to them, bottom line, perhaps it should be made very clear. Peaceful protest is okay, but if crimes are committed within the peaceful protest activities as described in permit applications, those perpetrators will be arrested and prosecuted. If you make it that clear, then it's kind of hard for them to declare that it's overwhelmingly peaceful, because then you can highlight those crimes and then push it in their face and say, well, what about that? You call that peaceful? People were arrested. You have to show the numbers, essentially.
Well, you can show them the videotape, and they'll sit right in front of you and lie to you about it being peaceful, and that's their constitutional right. And besides, we need more illegal alien gang members in here, and you shouldn't be against more illegal alien gang members. The Democrats will look you right in the face while the videotape is playing of the city burning, And they will tell you, and the news media has proven this again and again, and they'll tell you that violence is peaceful.
Yeah. Well, and that's what, as soon as when I heard your segment and the reporter asked the stupid question, I felt like I was having a flashback back to the first Trump administration. I said, well, this is a setup. and of course, Levitt, she responded in the only way you can respond, but it needs to be made clear, and they need to be made an example of. It needs to be very clear so that there's no ambiguity in the future. This is what a crime looks like happening within a peaceful protest. If you engage in this, you will be arrested. You will be on the news media for having been arrested, and you will be prosecuted. And until you actually produce numbers of, instead of talking about all the people that showed up, maybe it's time we start reporting on the data of all the peaceful protesters that got arrested for crimes committed during that protest. If we start showing them that data, it's going to be kind of hard for them to argue against it. A
news media might do that. So they did that. They did that to the hilt with January 6th, of course. And if you're a 75-year-old grandmother praying outside of an abortion clinic, they'll drag you away and throw you in prison for 2 years, which the Democrats did. The news media applauded that because, she was blocking access to an abortion clinic. And that was one of the funniest parts of that story was a woman who was actually in labor was trying to get into the abortion clinic. And they're like, don't you feel bad now? They're insane. They're violent. They're bloodthirsty. They're the left. They love death more than we love life. That used to be Al-Qaeda's slogan. The Democrat Party has poached it from them. Sure hope Al-Qaeda doesn't sue them over that. Thank you very much, Mary. Wonderful, wonderful call. Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at washingtontimes.com/Chris. It's true, a few days ago, Kamala Harris and Mary, the wonderful Mary, was talking about this. Kamala Harris defended the overwhelmingly peaceful protesters. That's what she called them, overwhelmingly peaceful. In her home state of California, which might fall into the ocean, while criticizing President Donald Trump's deployment of National Guard troops as a dangerous escalation and cruel, I say. And I got to tell you, you guys stop burning and looting and attacking and forming armies to attack federal buildings and then pulling the police back, and there will be no need for the National Guard. You know, National Guard has been called out again and again in the history of the United States, usually because Democrat governors are criminals. Racists like George Wallace, Guard called out on him by JFK and by LBJ. And the Guard had to be called out in the 101st Airborne because of Democrat Orville Faubus in Little Rock, Arkansas. Democrats. Now, we are a magnificent country. We are the greatest country ever. The Roman Empire was wonderful, too. I know it was great because liberals are angry about it. Of course, they're angry about the sun coming up and angry about everything. But I want to share with you something because the great Ronald Wilson Reagan, the greatest president of my lifetime and the one of the great presidents in the history of humankind, it was President Trump at the Brandenburg Gate in Berlin, Germany in 1987. On this date, June 12th, 1987, 38 years ago today, President Reagan at the Brandenburg Gate, the Soviet Union was still alive and healthy enough to murder people and imprison and brutalize and crush dissent like the Democrats, because the Democrats are so much like the Soviet Union now that they're almost indistinguishable, and they're just as anti-American as the Soviet Union was. President Reagan at the Brandenburg Gate, Berlin, Germany, 38 years ago today.
There is one sign that the Soviets can make that would be unmistakable, that would advance dramatically the cause of freedom and peace.
Listen to the crowd.
General Secretary Gorbachev, if you seek peace, if you seek prosperity for the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, if you seek liberalization, come here to this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate.
That was a very good idea. Freedom versus slavery. The left is slavery. America is freedom. Ronald Reagan, freedom.
Mr. Gorbachev. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Those were the days. Yes. That was just a few short years later that the communists in Tiananmen Square murdered thousands of their own people. And the Democrats today are putting out memes of that Chinese man, that brave Chinese man standing up for human liberty in front of the column of tanks in Beijing, China. And the Democrats today, they're planning on standing in front of tanks on Saturday, Constitution Avenue in Washington, D.C., celebrating the Army's 250th birthday. But this time, the idiot that stands in front of the tanks will be the communists. And the people inside the tanks will be the liberators. The left is here. And they're not on the side of freedom. Not at all. Not even close. So that's great stuff. And my friend Pat and I going back and forth this morning with text messages. And he loves to say that he loves Ronald Reagan would be understatement. And he's saying, it was 38 years ago today, the Mr. Gorbachev tear down this wall speech. And our old friend Tony Dolan, who I worked with at the Pentagon. Tony Dolan was working with Donald Rumsfeld at the time. And Tony Dolan and I became friends. And I believe he wrote the Mr. Gorbachev. That was always his claim to fame at bars. I wrote that, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. That's a pretty good one, I've got to say. Yes, sir. Yes, it is. Great stuff. Now, let's get back to the idiots of the Democrat Party. They are so many. They are so numerous. These people. That was a wonderful speech. He was a wonderful president. It was, in its own way, a wonderful time. Ronald Reagan. What a guy. What a president. Now, we've got this dimwit named David Hogg. David Hogg he was a high school student at Parkland High School in Florida when there was a mass shooting, and it was horrible. And the Democrat Party used him, and they've been using him ever since, as a child prophet of apocalyptic doom. And they made him the deputy director of the Democratic National Committee, the DNC, the number 2 guy at the DNC. And he said, you know what we need to do? We need to spend $20 million to unseat Democrats. This is where the problem came in. To unseat Democrats that aren't young enough, because he's 25 years old. He's 25. And the Democrats said, wait a minute, we can't have a deputy chair of the DNC who wants to use $20 million of our dollars, hard-earned from the Ukrainians and the Chinese and the communists and fascists everywhere. We can't use our $20 million to unseat Democrat members of Congress in primaries, which is what he wanted to do, because they're too old.
The reality is we know that only 27% of our base is approving of where we are right now as a party, and we lost voting shares with every single demographic except predominantly older voters and highly educated voters. That is a huge problem.
That is a huge problem. And he said it's time we got to stop that. And David Hogg was one of the golden children of the left. And they were using him like Greta von Thunberg, who's another child prophet of apocalyptic doom, because we're all going to die because the weather. And it was hilarious that she was tortured by being flown out of Israel in an LL aircraft all the way in the back row next to the men's room. Pretty funny, in a non-reclining seat. and I don't think she even got a vodka drink. Usually it's not a terribly long flight, though. They just flew her to France. Not really a big deal. But David Hogg's parents, all on Father Kevin Hogg and Mother Rebecca Broderick, our son has been, he was the deputy director of the Democratic National Committee at the age of 25. He's got a brilliant future in Democrat Party politics. And then he said something about defeating already established Democrats in primary elections. And the Democrat Party, lucky they didn't shoot him and kill him, because they do a lot of that. You know how they are. So the Democratic National Committee on Wednesday voted to remove 25-year-old activist David Hogg from his position as DNC vice chair. Hogg is the son of Kevin Hogg, a former FBI agent, Navy pilot, and elementary school teacher, and Rebecca Broderick, a teacher in the Broward County public school system in Florida. That's very nice. Now, Hogg gained national prominence after surviving, that was the standard, the 2018 shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. In the wake of the tragedy, he became a vocal advocate for stricter gun control and emerged as a prominent figure in the youth-led movement for political reform. He was being used and abused by the Democrat Party as another tool so he could shill for them. They thought, oh, he's cute, which is their number one standard for everything. See Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Gavin Newsom and for that matter, Luigi Mangione and Joker Tsarnaev. He's one of the Boston Marathon bombers that they put on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine because they wanted to date him, too. These people. And, of course, Kilmore Abrego Garcia, the Democrat Party. Absolute loons. But David Hogg put out a statement yesterday, and my best girl and I this morning, we were laughing out loud at the statement. It was on the television screen in front of us. We were watching the television news. And David Hogg put out a statement. First of all, his screed goes on and 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 on X, Twitter, just rambling incoherently. Anything that occurs to him, he's just tweeting, and that's his farewell missive as he leaves the post of number 2 at the DNC. And when I say number 2, what I mean is, but here's just a piece of the statement from David Hogg, and this had us laughing. Let me start with this. David Hogg says, I came to this role to play a positive role. I came to this role to play a positive role. In creating the change our party needs, it is clear that there's a fundamental disagreement about the role of a vice chair. Wait a minute, is that the word role 3 times in one? I'm going to have to go check on the scores at this Marjorie Taylor Douglas High School. Isn't that amazing? About the role of vice chair. He likes the word role. That's his word of the moment there. And it's okay to have disagreements, he wrote. What isn't okay is allowing this to remain our focus when there is so much more we need to be focused on. I'm sorry, what? The role and focus are the... Then he continues, ultimately, I have decided not to run for this upcoming election so the party can focus on what really matters. Now, wait a minute. He just used the word focus 3 times after using the word role 3 times. Use your words, David. This is enough for you to be fired right at just this portion of your statement. The focus, role, focus, these guys. They are not well. Yes, sir. Yeah. Also, they say that David Hogg survived the shooting. Turns out he wasn't actually at school that day. Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, theoretically, I wasn't at that school that day either. I survived that school shooting, too. Because I wasn't there also. Wasn't even at school. Good thing I wasn't at school because something bad happened there. Good thing I wasn't on that airplane in India that crashed today. You know what? I survived that plane crash in India by the same standard. And it is, there has been an airliner that has crashed in India, and the news media is tiptoeing around it and tap dancing around it, but it looks like there will be no survivors from this airliner crash in India, and obviously a terrible, horrible thing. But yeah, he survived. That's what all the news media loves to say. Oh yeah, he survived the school shooting, the old-fashioned way, by not being there.
On the day of the shooting, I got my camera and got on my bike and rode as fast as I could 3 miles from my house to the school to get as much video and get on as many interviews as I could, because I knew that this could not be another mass shooting.
Yeah. So he was 3 miles away, but he got on his bike. Was it a Schwinn Stingray? So he could ride to the school and then take pictures. And that was the extent of his involvement at the school shooting. I live in Washington, D.C. every day, every year for a long, long time. I think we have more shootings than that on an average weekend in Washington, D.C. I guess I survived last weekend in Washington, D.C., didn't I? These people, can I just say, these people, they are not well at all. Not well at all. Our Democrat Party, they are crazy. Yes, sir. Crazy, man, crazy. And our media, give them a chance and they'll mislead you. What's the old saying? If you don't read the newspapers, you're uninformed. And if you do read the newspapers, you're misinformed. There it is. And that's great. Marty and I were going back and forth on this David Hogg thing. And Marty's like, isn't it true? He wasn't even at school that day. And then Michael, he's got the soundbite. Oh, yeah, I remember I saw something on the news and I got on my bicycle and I rode to school and I took pictures. And then the Democrats said, well, we want to date him. Maybe we can use him and abuse him before we spit him out. So he's learning a lot about Democrat Party politics, got to say, and the role they might want to play because, the role. That's good. He's their guy. And he wants to focus. Hocus pocus by focus. And by David Hogg. Amazing stuff. You know that the all-new third-generation Eden Pure Thunderstorm air purifier has finally arrived on the scene, and it builds on the incredible success of the previous generations, which earned them thousands of five-star reviews on Al Gore's Amazing Internet and became a bestseller in no time. The new Eden Pure Thunderstorm uses two technologies. These technologies, studies have shown, help to kill up to 99.9% of bacteria and viruses floating in the air where you live, where you work, removes dust and pet stuff and smoke and a whole lot from the air that you breathe, things that you don't want to be breathing. And it gets rid of any odor. And that's a good thing. No filters to replace and buy again and again on a schedule. The Eden Pure Thunderstorm will get rid of any stinky smell, guaranteed. Talking about odors from trash cans and cigarette smoke and musty basements and left-wing protesters, no match for the Eden Pure Thunderstorm. Any smell will disappear in just a few seconds. And right now, you can save $200 American on an Eden Pure Thunderstorm 3-pack. A 3-pack, I tell you. For whole home protection. Because you hang out with me, you save $200. Put one in your bedroom and your teenager's room. Bring one to work. Give one as a gift. All you have to do is go to EdenPureDeals.com and use the discount code Chris3. That's Al Gore's Amazing Internet to save $200 on 3 thunderstorms. That is EdenPureDeals.com. Discount code is Chris and the number 3. Pretty good, I've got to say. Yeah, so David Hogg gets the boot. Everything they tell you is a lie. Oh, David Hogg survived the school shooting. The Parkland school shooting. Yeah. Yes, he did. Because he was miles away at the time. Because he wasn't there. Chairman James Comer, Republican Congressman James Comer, holding a hearing in the House of Representatives today with left-wing radical Democrat governors who are not on our side. From Illinois, the inherited billionaire, Pritzker, right? J.B. Pritzker. And you got Hochul from New York and Tim Walz, the idiot from Minnesota. And James Comer, they're there to talk about their sanctuary state policies, right? And Congressman Chairman James Comer during the introduction of the left-wing governors.
Today, the House Oversight Committee will continue to examine the consequences of reckless and dangerous sanctuary policies that jeopardize public safety. 3 sanctuary state governors from Minnesota, New York, and Illinois are here to testify under oath about why they allow criminal illegal aliens to roam free in American communities.
Criminal illegals.
Let me be clear. Sanctuary policies do not protect Americans. They protect criminal illegal aliens.
The Democrats love criminal illegal aliens. The Democrat Party loves criminals. They love violent mobs in the street committing acts of political violence. Honestly, again, last night, Steve Scalise at the baseball game last night, and all the Republican baseball players on their jerseys had the date emblazoned on their sleeves. The day that Steve Scalise was shot, suicide attack by a Bernie Sanders volunteer, James Hodgkinson. He had to be gunned down by the police. He was there to murder the entire Republican baseball team. And that was a one-day story for CNN and the New York Times because the left is here. All right, let's grab a quick phone call. Let's go to Phil, calling from Fredericksburg, Virginia. Philip, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Plant. Look, my concern is, first off, it's so wonderful that the American military is getting celebrated, but these protesters have decided they are not going to protest in D.C. They're going to carry their protest outside of D.C. on the overpasses of the interstates that enter the city. And if you saw the videos from Los Angeles, those are the last people we want on Virginia and Maryland and D.C. overpasses. I'm begging President Trump to send the National Guard to secure those overpasses and for our local police to secure those overpasses, because I really fear these people when they get the high ground that they will start attacking people.
Well, that's just because you pay attention and you've seen them hurling cinder blocks and bricks off of bridges and overpasses and attacking the police and disabling vehicles because they're organized, they're orchestrated, they're wearing Hamas face masks to conceal their identities, and they're engaging in the usual mob political violence that the Democrat Party is so well known for.